Good afternoon, law nerds. We are going back to court for the afternoon of day 16 of the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. We are in the fourth week. We are on witness 40, Kerri Roberts. She is one of the two witnesses that Karen Reed called in the morning to help go look for John, and is relaying what happened the morning of January 29th, 2022 in her direct examination. So we are going to resume in court. I'm not going to even roll the intro. I just want to go to court. I'm deeply invested in what else happens from here. I wish these were earlier witnesses, but it is what it is. So we're just going to go back to court. I've got my lunch with me. Replay crew, love you. Everything's timestamped down below. And for those of you that are new here, hi, new law nerds. Don't forget the Law Nerd app is where I can keep you in the loop when witnesses take the stand. I know a lot of you got the app notification when this witness took the stand and popped back in. I think the next witness that I am waiting for to take the stand will be Brian Higgins. When we get to the afternoon break, we will do much more of a breakdown. But for now, I think we just need to go to court. What do you think? Chat, you let me know. I think that that's what we're going to do. Let me just gain up the volume. Let me pump up the volume. Pump up the volume. All right, you know what we need to do? Chat.
Bring the jury.
Let's just go to court, shall we? I say yes. Oh, is that happening? No, there we go. There's court. Let's roll. Let's see. That sounds good. Let's just do it. Why not? We make our own rules. You guys know I'm a lawyer. Been a lawyer for a bit. Witnesses taking the stand. Replay crew, timestamps, all the things. Let's just go to court. It's fine. We get to do what we want.
All right,
we're the law nerds.
Ready?
All right. Thank you for all of you that are dancing along to the intro.
Good afternoon.
That I didn't play.
Good afternoon.
So if I can take you back just for a moment.
No, Lolly, don't take us back anywhere. Can we move forward?
Just for a moment back
We so
to when
desperately want to move forward.
you first
Onward.
where Mr. O'Keefe is on the grass. And at any point
Onward.
when you observed him, what, if any, observations did you make as far as how Mr. O'Keefe was dressed at that time?
Was he dressed?
Yes.
He had jeans on. I couldn't really tell because he was covered in snow. But I know that I think he had 2 layers on because when the defendant lifted his shirt.
You recall if any one of those layers was like a winter jacket or any kind of heavy coat or anything like that?
No.
I'm sorry. No, you don't recall, or no?
No, it was not a coat.
It was not a clear question, Mr. Lolly. That's why the no didn't make sense. See, when it's compound, the no doesn't make sense.
Now,
So,
take you back to when you were in front of the house, and
I'm going to try to gain this up a little bit.
Ambulance, and at some point in time, the ambulance leaves.
I'm struggling between hearing Lally and witnesses breathing on the mic. That's the battle.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And do you know where the ambulance was going?
Good Samaritan
That didn't
Hospital.
And following that,
There we go.
you mentioned that Ms. McCabe went inside the house, correct?
Yes.
There we
And
go.
do you recall what it was that caused her to go inside the house?
Objection.
No, I'll allow that. Not what anyone said.
But do you know?
I think she was going to wake her sister.
That's what she said before
And,
lunch.
After she left, was there anybody else that beyond sort of first responders or police officers, things like that, any other sort of civilian people show up that you recall?
Matt showed up at some point. Jen's husband, Matt.
And that was before you left, is that correct?
Yes.
And just to be clear, you had, we'll get to this more in a moment, but you had left from the house once, come back, and then left again?
Yes.
And when her husband, Matt McCabe, showed up, which of those times was that, if you recall?
I think he was there when I left the first time.
It's
And,
not my
did
breathing.
you have any conversation with him?
I just said, he said, I said, I'm going to get the O'Keefes. He said, do you want me to come with you? And I said, no. So he went in the house.
And when you left, who, if anyone, initially when you left, who, if anyone, left with you?
I left with Karen Reed.
And as you're leaving your car, you're driving
I very much want to know what happens here because at some point they return to 34 Fairview and Karen Reed is taken by ambulance. So this I'm very curious about.
Driving, is that correct?
Yes.
Where is Miss Reed in the car at that point?
Say it again.
Where was Miss Reed in your car at that point?
In the passenger seat.
And as you were leaving, what, if anything, were the two of you doing or talking about, or what was going on when you left that first?
As we were leaving, she was saying to me, if anything happens to John, I'm going to kill myself. You need to take care of these kids.
And how did you respond?
He's not going to die. No one's doing anything of that nature or something of that nature, I said.
And as far as you're driving away, Chapman, and you're facing towards Cedar Crest, is that right?
Yes.
And so when you left, are you following in that sort of same direction towards Cedar Crest?
I took a right onto Cedar Crest.
And then where did you go from there?
And then I got to Dedham Street and I went to take a right. And then Officer Good let me go to pick up the O'Keefes to take them. I had to give him my phone number so that he could get in touch with me if he needed to. So he did call and he said, do you have Miss Reed with you? And I said, yes. And he said, please bring her back. Her parents have called in a suicide. They said she's saying she's suicidal, so they want her to be sectioned.
When did they talk?
So coming back to that
When
in a
did
moment,
she
but
talk to her parents?
before you and
I don't
left the scene,
understand
you
when she
hadn't
talked to
talked
her
any
parents.
police officers or anything at that time, correct?
No, other than my name and phone number, but no.
So you gave them your information and then said, I have to go pick up the O'Keefes.
Yes.
So you get that call from Officer Good, and then you come back to the house, is that right?
When did
Yes.
Karen talk to her
And
parents?
during any of that time, you recall the defendants, I know you had mentioned she spoke to Aaron O'Keefe. Was there anybody else that the defendant spoke to or talked to while you were with her in the car?
She spoke to her mother. And then I ended up taking the phone and speaking to her mother, and I gave her my phone number, and I said, I'm going to go to the hospital. She said, please make sure she does not have her purse. She has medication in her purse. I don't want her to take.
And then when you arrived back at the scene, what happened then?
She just got out of the car and walked to the ambulance.
And who, if anyone, did she walk, and by she, you mean the defendant?
I'm sorry, yes.
And who, if anyone, did the defendant walk from your car to the ambulance with?
She just walked, I think she just walked by herself. I had her phone because I had been talking to her mother. So then one of the first responders came over and said, do you have her phone? And I said, yes. Her mother said, make sure she does not have her purse.
And then following that conversation with one of the first responders, where did you go from there?
I went to go pick up the O'Keefes.
And as far as your drive from Canton, you went to, where do the O'Keefes live?
Braintree.
So your drive from Canton to Braintree and then subsequently from Braintree to Brockton, what, if anything, did you observe about sort of the driving conditions at that point?
I was actually on the phone with Katie Camerano and I spun out, did a complete spun a couple times on 93, right near the Braintree exit. So that when I got to the O'Keefes, that we went back roads to Brockton because I didn't want to go on the highway.
And as far as the O'Keefes, as far as in your car from Braintree to Brockton, that was both John's mother and father?
Correct.
And at some point you get to the Good Samaritan Hospital in Brockton, correct?
Correct.
And do you know about what time it was that you got there?
I don't know.
When you arrived, where is it that you and the O'Keefes sort of go within the hospital?
John's brother Paul had already arrived. And then we all walked in. We were in the waiting area. John's cousin actually works on the switchboard. We had been talking to her on the way in because with COVID restrictions, we didn't know if we were going to be able to get in or, so she had come out from the switchboard, her office, because she knew there had been an accident. So she came out to greet her family. And then I asked her to take me to the bathroom to clean up and to the chapel.
And why was it that you had to go clean up?
Say it again?
Why was it that you
Because
had
she
to go
still
clean
had her friend's
'Cause I
blood
had
on her
blood.
lally.
On my hands.
Now, Ms. Roberts, you mentioned that during part of the drive from Canton to Braintree, you spoke to Ms. Camerano, correct?
Yes.
And during either that drive or the subsequent drive from Braintree to Brockton, who, if anyone else, did you speak to over the phone?
And Karen called me repeatedly from the ambulance asking if I was going to come to the hospital. Then she called when the O'Keefes were in the car and said she dropped him off at a party. And Mrs. O'Keefe said, "You just left him." And Mr. O'Keefe said, "Leave her alone. She's been through enough." She called a few times while we were on the ride. And then she called a lot when we were at the hospital asking if I knew anything, if he was dead, is he dead? She would hang up and then call back, hang up and then call back.
And if you know about how many times was that?
She said
At least 10.
I'm not surprised that at this point Karen still has her phone. This witness had Karen's phone and gave it to the paramedics. The paramedics said that she was talking to them in the ambulance, and I don't remember if they said she made a call, but the paramedics didn't seem to think she needed to be Section 12. The paramedics were, once the police gave them the paperwork, they said that they had to. They thought she was experiencing grief, like grief, panic. They thought the emotions were within the natural realm of human emotion for what was going on. And so the paramedics, I'm not surprised, didn't just take her phone away. They were a little, I think, compassionate and patient with that, even though law enforcement gave them the paperwork and said, you have to take her to the hospital. But this is the first time we're hearing any of this because this witness went to the hospital with John's parents. So let's continue on. And
that same sort of phraseology that she was using on scene as far as is he dead, she repeated that in the phone calls at the hospital?
Yes.
Now, once you arrive at the hospital and you're able to clean up a little bit, where did you go from there? What happened?
I went to the chapel and I said a prayer. And then I went in and talked to John's cousin, and she said that Dr. Rice was going to ask to meet with the family and that they would be told how John was doing and that they would bring John's family back to see John. So when I came out, they were being called in by Dr. Rice, and I sat in the waiting area.
And after some period of time sitting in the waiting area, what happened then?
Mrs. O'Keefe came out and told me John was gone. And then she asked if I wanted to see him. So I did, because I figured it would be better than when I last saw him. Maybe he was cleaned up, but it was not. It was worse.
Yeah. Sorry, man, but as far as say that it was worse.
What did you say?
Where John was, is that right?
Yes.
And what did you see?
He was in a neck brace, and both eyes were huge. Whereas when I found him, it was only one, but they were like black, almost like filled with, I don't know, blood or fluid. They were huge.
Beyond what you observed in his eyes, what, if anything else, did you see on John's body as you were?
He had scratches on his arm.
Do you recall which arm it was?
His right arm.
I don't know if we need this from this witness.
Recall where on his arm?
Like here.
There's photos. There's photos. Lally.
Following that, as far as going in to see John, what happened then?
We came back out to the waiting area. Mrs. O'Keefe wanted to get his necklace off, but I couldn't get it. So her and Paul went back in to get the necklace off. And Karen had called me at some point from the hospital and said, my father's going to be coming. Can you just keep a lookout for him? So I said, so when Mr. Reed, her father, walked in, Mr. O'Keefe recognized him and he said, that's Karen's father. So I went over and I said, Mr. Reed, Mr. O'Keefe would like to speak to you. And then I just stood there.
And?
I didn't know what to do.
I mean, it's probably all hearsay, but and?
And at some point, did you leave from the hospital?
I did. I took Mr. O'Keefe in my car, and Paul took Mrs. O'Keefe in his.
And where did the two vehicles, where did you go?
I dropped Mr. O'Keefe off at John's house, and then I went home.
And without getting into too much detail as far as the road conditions that you described earlier, how were they?
It was absolutely horrible. I told Mr. O'Keefe, if you see a front door in your vision, we are about to hit a house because I can't see where we're going. And my windshield wiper broke.
Oh, no.
Now, so you dropped Mr. O'Keefe off at John's house on Meadows, is that right?
Yes,
And Ms. Reed's vehicle, was that still there at that point?
I think so. I don't recall, but I think so.
And then you went home, is that correct?
Yes.
Later on that day or that afternoon, who, if anyone, came to your house to speak to you in regard to what?
There were 2 officers, but I don't remember their names.
And do you recall which department they were from?
The state police.
As far as the officers that came to your house and spoke to you, you don't recall their names, is that correct?
I don't.
Do you recall if either one of them was a Trooper Proctor?
It was not.
And where in your house did you speak to
In the dining room.
When?
them? And did they speak to anybody else at your house at that time?
My husband.
And as far as when they spoke to you and they spoke to your husband, where were you? Starting with yourself, do you know where your husband was when the troopers were speaking to you?
I don't know where he was, but he wasn't in the room with me.
And same as far as when the troopers were speaking with you.
So they were separated when they were talking.
I was not in the room.
Following that, did you have occasion to speak to any other troopers or members of the state police at any point in time afterward?
I've only spoken to Michael Proctor one time. It was from Jen's house.
And when was that, if you know?
Oh,
I don't know, maybe a
She's
couple
telling
days
them
later, because
everything.
Jen and I were re-going over what everything had happened. Mrs. O'Keefe had advised us to make a timeline because she said this could be a while. You guys aren't going to remember something years from now. So sit down, write down what you remember. And I, at that point, said, well, when she first called, she said he was dead. And Jen said, I don't think you've told them that. So Michael Proctor called, or she was on the phone with him, or I don't even know. And I said, could I speak to him? So I told him so that somebody had it documented.
So as far as Trooper Proctor was concerned, that phone conversation, is that the only contact that you have with Trooper Proctor?
Yes.
And if you recall, was it February 1st or so that you met with some troopers at Mr. Cave's house?
State Trooper who?
At some point, did you meet with troopers at Mr. Cave's house?
Yes.
And if you know, was that on or around a couple days later, like February 1st or so?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
what I don't know is how Jen knew that this witness hadn't told Proctor that Karen called her and said, John's dead. How does Jen know that she didn't tell him that?
I can't be sure.
Were either of those troopers that you met at Mr. Cave's house, were either of those troopers Trooper Proctor?
No.
And do you recall where within Miss McCabe's house you spoke to them?
In the living room.
And beyond yourself and the troopers that you spoke to, was there anybody else in the room with you when you spoke to them?
No.
And at some point, either then or subsequent to then, was there any request made by any trooper from the state police in regard to your cell phone?
To my cell phone, yes.
And do you recall if it was that date or a later date?
It was not that day. I think it was the next day. It was within the next 2 days. They wanted to clone my phone.
Well,
And
extract.
did they advise you of anything or give you any form that you had to fill out and execute?
Did
prior
you
to
delete
doing
anything
that?
before they did
Yes,
that?
I had to fill
That's
out a
all we want to
form.
know.
And as far as your phone was concerned, were there any restrictions or anything that you gave to them as far as what they could look at or what they could clone or what they could do with your phone?
No.
And as far as how sort of that process works, as far as the cell phone extraction or anything, do you know anything about that?
No.
And do you recall how long it was that you were without your phone at the time you handed it over to them to whenever you got it back?
Well, they took both of our phones at the same time, and we didn't get them back for like 7 or 8 hours.
And just to be clear, when you say both of our phones, you're
Jen-
who else?
Jen's phone and my phone.
Now, at some point or at any point, did you give any kind of interview or have any conversation with any officer from the Canton Police in regard to what happened that day?
No.
And are you familiar with a Canton officer named Michael Lang?
Yes.
How do you know him?
My daughter and his daughter are friends.
So beyond your daughters being friends, is that someone that you know or that you socialize with or anything like that?
No, I mean, they've come over to my house, his wife and him, one time, but we don't hang out with them socially. His wife and I are friends.
Now, at some point,
They're friendly through kid
around
activities.
this day,
Okay.
around January 29th. Let me ask you, turning to the next day of January 30th, do you recall what you did that day?
We went over to the O'Keefe's house, my daughter, Jen, and Jen's daughter, and myself.
And following that, do you recall where you went?
My daughter wanted to get dropped off to her friend's house at Mike Link's.
And so after leaving the O'Keefe's house, is it still the same as far as yourself, your daughter, Ms. McCabe, and her daughter?
Her daughter stayed at the O'Keefe's.
And as far as Ms. McCabe was concerned, was it after dropping your daughter off, did you go anywhere with Ms. McCabe after that?
I just stopped at Mike Lank's house, I think, and then we went home.
And so when you got
How
to
long were you at Lang's house?
your daughter's friend's house, who, if anyone, did you speak with?
Because we've heard
Mike's wife came out to the car to see how I was and how the O'Keefes were, and so she talked to us for a little, just asking how everyone was.
And if you know, ma'am, do you know about how long that conversation was?
I mean, I'm a talker, so it's probably a while. I'd say at least 45 minutes.
she's like, no, we
Was that a
chatted.
conversation like through
Okay.
the window, or did she get in the car? You know,
I think she got in the car. She was in the back seat because it was freezing.
from that conversation, do you recall anything beyond sort of how people were doing or anything? Did you discuss anything about sort of what you had seen or what you had heard the day before on the 29th?
I don't recall. It was just a regular conversation. Well, not regular, obviously, but she was more concerned how the O'Keefes were doing, how the kids were doing.
And then after you left from the Lang's house, where did you go? Where did you and Miss McCabe go?
I don't know. I'm assuming home.
I may have a moment, Jeremy.
Yes.
For this witness, now being a self-identified talker, she has not offered much in the way of exposition on the stand. It's
May we
been
approach this?
pretty
Okay.
consistent. All right, they're approaching. I have half pretzel in my mouth. We're going to catch up to real time here pretty fast. I don't think there's any cross to this witness. What? Wait, what? Wait, what? I thought they were still sidebar. No cross? What?
Thank you. Okay. All right.
No cross.
Thank you.
I did not see that coming. No cross?
Your next witness, Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth will call Miss Laura Sullivan to the stand.
No cross? Huh. Chat, just your first impressions. What do you think that signals to the jury, or what does it signal to you that they're not doing a cross? Before I give you my thoughts, what do you think about no cross? As they call Laura Sullivan.
And Mr. Lally, I'd like you to tell me when you want me to give that instruction.
I think it's,
So just wave it from it, flag
No
it for me.
cross. All right, witness 41, Laura Sullivan, after no cross of Kerri Roberts. I'm surprised.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the evidence you give to the court and jury in the case now and hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Laura Sullivan, Sullivan.
And where do you live?
Pembroke, Massachusetts.
And how long have you lived in Pembroke?
Almost 6 years.
And who, if anyone, do you live in Pembroke with?
I live with my boyfriend and our 3 children. 2 stepchildren that are with us half the time, and then my son, Ben.
And your son, how old is he?
He's 10.
Okay.
10. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. And your stepchildren, how old are they?
Why does
15
it
and
matter?
13.
Now, do you work, ma'am?
I do.
What do you do?
I work in human resources.
How long have you been doing it?
Just over 6 years.
Ma'am, if I could turn your attention to New Year's Eve of 2021 into New Year's Day 2022. Do you recall that time frame?
I do.
And do you recall where you were?
I was in Aruba.
And if you could explain to the jury sort of how often was that a regular trip that you did around
Was
that time
in
of year?
Aruba
Yeah.
on New Year's Day.
We've been doing a trip like around that time for, I'd say, 5 or 6 years. This will be our 6th year, I believe.
And over the course of those 5 or 6 years that you've done that, when you say sort of we, how did that start and how has that expanded, if at all?
So we've been going, Josh and I have been going to Aruba for years. In 2021, post-COVID, we decided to bring our children. We had never gone with them before. And since it was post-COVID, a lot of people are kind of stir crazy. And a group of our friends jumped on board. And so we went from just the 5 of us going to approximately 60 people.
60?
And as far as the
60?
yourself and or the other people, how,
60 people? Oh boy. That's a lot of people.
is this all at one sort of facility or how were the bookings done?
So we all stayed at the Renaissance, which is in downtown, and we buy timeshares. So it was a timeshare resort where we would purchase weeks that people owned. And so if they weren't going for that year, we would buy a week. So we were able to get, I think it was something, close to 20 rooms for all of us to go for the same week.
Holy shit, that sounds
And as far
exhausting.
as planning in regard to that year in particular, when did that planning process sort of begin?
It starts approximately a year in advance because the rooms go on sale almost immediately because people want to get rid of them. So I would say it was probably around January of 2021 that we booked our room for that year.
And once you had booked your room, as far as the family and friends group that you were talking about, how was that sort of put out to them,
Lally?
like through what means?
We would,
Nobody
I would
cares how they
post on
book the
Facebook.
timeshare.
More rooms are
OMG.
available for
Stop.
Aruba if anybody was interested in going. So the timeshare owners would reach out to me directly. Is there anybody else who would want to go? And we would look for any interested either friends or what have you to join our trip.
And so at some point in time over the summer of 2021, say July or August or so, was there someone who, a friend of yours that reached out in regard to joining, possibly coming on the trip?
Yeah, I received a text message from John O'Keefe interested in learning more information about our trip.
And if you could describe to the jury sort of.
I don't know how much background on this we actually need.
I met John in May of 2013.
She sounds so nervous.
I met him at a bar in South Boston with, he was with Pat Rogers at the time. Post meeting John, I started dating Pat, and my son's father is Pat Rogers. And
I could stop you there just
Yep.
a moment. So as far as John O'Keefe and your son's father, Pat Rogers, did you know or did you come to know sort of what?
Chat, there was a fight in Aruba, an argument that was testified to by John O'Keefe's sister-in-law over whether or not John was making out with somebody in Aruba. I'm imagining this is the person that they are going to be asking about that too. That is my guess at this point. We will see.
They did for a living.
yeah, they're both Boston police officers.
And did you know sort of what the relationship was beyond co-workers of Mr. O'Keefe and Mr. Rogers?
Yeah,
I think the
they were best friends.
so you dated John's
So at
best
some point
friend.
Following that meeting in 2013, you began to date Mr. Rogers, is that right?
Correct.
And what happened?
So in July of 2013, I became pregnant. And
We know more about
in
these
November
people's
of
lives
2013,
than any murder
Pat committed
trial.
suicide.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And
What?
you okay?
I was not what?
Following that, how would you describe sort of?
So, as I was saying, this is why she was emotional about this testimony. The father of her child is John O'Keefe's deceased best friend. Who she dated in 2013. But this is more digging into everyone's life than I thought that we would get to.
The relationship with Mr. O'Keefe, or how did it evolve?
So in November of 2013, I was on a work trip, and I had not had the best conversation with Pat. It was kind of, it just didn't feel right. And I called John and said, you need to go find him. I can't get a hold of him. He won't answer his phone. And so John left his nephew's birthday party and called a bunch of people on the way. And ultimately, Pat was found in the basement of his house. And John was there immediately following, but he was the one that found people to go find Pat.
Oh my God.
Immediately following that, John never really left my side, as a support system.
Oh my God.
And at some point following that, you had your son.
Yeah.
And before or after that, at some point, did you have a conversation with Mr. O'Keefe in regard to your son?
It was his birthday, December of 2013, and we went to the Playwright, which is where we had all met. And I gave him a card and I asked him to be Ben's godfather, and he said yes.
And in relation to your son, was Mr. O'Keefe Was John involved in your son's life?
Yes, very much so.
And how so?
He was every birthday, Christmas. He was always in contact. He was the first person in my delivery room after I gave birth. He was a constant. He was a connection to Pat, and always making sure that Ben was taken care of in the sense of being there to tell stories or what have you.
Chad, I need a minute.
His relationship with Pat.
I need a minute, and then we will talk about why I think this is relevant and why the DA is doing this. It's not to be cruel to this witness.
Also become familiar with your family as well.
Yeah. Yep.
And in regard to your family, was there some kind of term, or how would they refer to Mr. O'Keefe?
The Godfather. He was called the Godfather to almost everybody.
Of course they called him the Godfather.
Now,
and of course he was Godfather to his best friend's
summer of 2021.
son.
I received a text from Mr. O'Keefe. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And
So I'm sorry, you do have to say yes or no.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
After you received that text, did you reach out to Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes, I gave him a call because I was excited. I was immediately excited. I gave him a call, explained to him that we had a group of rooms. We were going with, I don't even know the number at that time that had, signed up to go, but it was a lot of kids. It was all of our friends, and that they would have a great time.
This is why John was
And
in
from that,
Aruba.
did he give you any sense or say anything about who from was it just himself or like who was coming along?
He had mentioned that it would be the kids, and he said Karen would be joining him as well.
And at that point, at some point subsequent to that, you knew him to be referring to Karen, correct?
Yes.
At that point, had you met Karen Reed? Did you know who that was?
I had not. I knew that they were dating, but I had never met Karen, no.
And in addition to himself, it would have been Mr. O'Keefe, Ms. Reed, the defendant, and his niece and nephew, Patrick and Taylor.
Correct, yes.
And if you know, in relation to your son, as far as Mr. O'Keefe's nephew, Patrick, where are they in relation as far as ages?
They're like three years apart. 3 years apart.
Now, when you have that phone conversation with Mr. O'Keefe, what, if any, interest does he show as far as going through?
After asking a couple questions, I could hear Karen in the background, and he put Karen on the phone, and that was the first time I had spoken to her. He basically said, just talk to her so you can answer her questions.
Do you recall what kind of questions they were or what it was about?
She was interested in the room setup, how many people could sleep in a room, and how the room is set up. You have a king size bedroom, and then there's a kitchen area, and then there's a living room that has a pull-out couch. And I explained that it's a 4-person occupancy room, and you could get a roll-away bed as well.
And following that conversation, when was the next time, if at all, that you had any conversation with Mr. O'Keefe and or Ms. Reed in regard to the Aruba?
So during that conversation, Karen mentioned that she needed her own bathroom and she needed her own space, and that she wanted 2 rooms. And so I put them in contact with a woman that I knew had 2 rooms for them to, figure that piece out. I don't handle any of that. I put people in contact with whoever owns the rooms. I put them in contact with the woman who had the 2 rooms, and I know that they had, paid her relatively quickly. I mentioned to John that the rooms, I couldn't promise that the rooms would be next to each other, and they weren't. They were on opposite sides of the hotel, but they got 2 rooms.
Okay.
And when you say opposite sides of the hotel, where you know sort of where those rooms were in relation to each other and who stayed in which room?
So the pool and lobby is in the center, and then the hotel comes like this, and there are pool walkout rooms on the first floor of each. And Karen and John were on this side, and the kids were on this side, and they both had walkout rooms.
And as far as sort of front door to front door, do you know about how far away they were from each other?
I would say, I mean, steps wise, maybe 200. But the hotel is it's small
I
enough,
keep
but it
moving
was
so you can
separated
see
by a
her.
lobby, the front entrance, the outside entrance.
Now, with regard to your arrival, when was it that you arrived in Aruba?
So the timeshare rooms run Friday to Friday. So we were booked for the 31st through the 7th. Josh's birthday is December 30th. So we went down as a family a day early. And we had friends who were already down there since Christmas. John's timeshare room woman reached out and said, hey, we're leaving early if you want to arrive early. So him, Karen, and the kids actually came down on the 30th as well. They were on the flight following us. And then the rest of the 60-ish people, however many were there, showed up on the 31st.
And so from that first day that you arrived there, as far as when you got there on the 30th, when was the first time that you saw John, or when was the first time that you saw anyone from that group?
It was, we were at the pool, so it was not long after they had landed. He texted me and said, we're here. And Ben and I jumped out of the pool and went to the lobby to see him. And then on the way back from the lobby, I saw somebody banging on the window on the left-hand side of the rooms, and I didn't know who it was. And then I saw Kaylee, and I was like, oh, well, that must be Karen.
And again, was this the first time that you had seen Karen face-to-face or met Miss Reed?
Yes.
And just for clarity purposes, as far as Miss Reed is concerned, do you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Could you just identify as to where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's wearing?
She's right there.
Just has a record reflect identification of the defendant.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is going
Now,
to go to whether or
obviously-
not Karen and John were fighting, whether or not they were fighting over what the sister-in-law described as a hug with this woman, because Karen called the sister-in-law, according to the sister-in-law's testimony, and said that Karen was upset and yelling because John was kissing this woman in Aruba, and the sister-in-law said, kissing? Were they hugging? So that is what this testimony is going to. But I mean, this is the mother of his best friend's kid. We will see what she has to say, but that's what it's going towards, is whether or not the defendant was jealous, fighting with John, whether it was a rational jealousy, whether it was not. This is what this is going to go towards.
Person
So we'll
banging on
see.
the window and you recognize Kaylee.
But the sister-in-law
what happened?
testified about the fight.
She came out. She gave me a big hug, said, it's nice to meet you. I've heard so much about you. I recognized you from pictures.
Aruba was New Year's. Unless she saw it. It might not have been her. It might have been that she saw what happened. I don't know. But Aruba was the New Year's going into 2022. So this would have been New Year's into 2022. John was killed at the end of January 2022. So,
Pictures.
but we'll see what this
And
witness does. It might have been her
following along
sister.
from there,
Chad, I don't remember.
what
It might have been her
happened then
sister.
As far as the day was concerned.
But that's why they're getting into
So as I
it.
mentioned, it was Josh's birthday. We had already made plans to go out for dinner. Our friends who had been there since Christmas have a 17-year-old daughter who watched our children so we could go out for dinner. I mentioned it to John. I said, we'll just add you to the reservation. You can join us for dinner. The kids can stay with Chloe. And they said absolutely. So we all went out for dinner that evening to Screaming Eagle.
And Screaming Eagle, where is that in relation to the hotel, the rent?
It's probably about a 15-ish minute cab ride.
And when you arrived there, what, if anything, do you recall about sort of the dinner or how it went?
So we were sitting outside on the patio. It was Karen, myself, our friend Laura. Across from Laura was her husband, Dave. Josh was in front of me, and John was in front of Karen.
And what, if anything, specific do you recall about the dinner or sort of what happened at dinner?
So we, the waiter came over. He started taking drink orders. Karen placed her order. I placed mine.
And
Laura placed hers. Dave placed his. And then Josh ordered a dirty martini with blue cheese stuffed olives.
well, they're the best olives.
I'll allow it. I don't know where it's going, and you can move to strike unless you wanted to see me, Mr. Yannetti. Okay.
There's an objection. Excuse me, Mr. Yannetti. Oh, I have had a tremendous amount of respect for this defense attorney, but if there is going to be slander towards blue cheese stuffed olives, I will lose my mind. It is the appropriate and best way to drink a dirty martini. If you can find a restaurant that has bacon blue cheese stuffed olives, even better. We love the blue cheese stuffed olives. I don't know where this is going, but we're all going to find out together. Chat, if any of you know where this is going, leave it be. No spoilers. We're going to find out together. But now we've gotten to dirty martinis. So already this witness has been surprising. So here we go. Why do the drinks matter? I don't think the drinks matter to the defense. I was being facetious. I don't think the drinks matter to Yannetti. I think it's Yannetti knows where this is going. And that is what he's trying to head off, not the actual martinis of it all.
So, Ms. Sullivan, turning back to at the restaurant, the drinks that are ordered, people have what they have. And at the end of the evening, as far as
Lolly's very into everybody's drink orders.
Correct.
And what, if anything, do you recall about that?
Karen had paid the bill prior to us receiving it.
That's incredibly generous.
And what, if any, reaction did you or anyone have in regard?
The entire table was kind of taken aback, said it wasn't necessary, wanted to Venmo or give cash or something
Karen
along
picked
those
up the
lines,
tab.
and she declined, saying that she was honored to be there and wanted to pay for it.
Turning your attention
Huh.
to the following day.
Okay. That's very nice.
What, if anything, do you recall about the next day being that would have been, I'm sorry, the 31st, is that correct?
Yes.
So turning your attention to December 31st, 2021, what, if anything, do you recall about that day and in specific regard to Mr. O'Keefe and his
John was very vocal on the 30th on how he just wanted to sit in the pool and watch the Alabama game.
And
I mean-
he was a pretty big Alabama fan, is that correct?
Yes.
I'm not an Alabama fan. Sorry, Bama
And
fans.
so over
but-
the course of that day, what, if any, interaction?
I understand I just want to sit in the pool and
with
be left
either,
alone.
starting with Mr. O'Keefe, what, if any, interaction did you have with him?
I saw him in the pool. I know he was sitting at the pool bar watching the game with Josh. I saw the kids. I recall seeing Karen. I don't remember if we spoke or not. But it was mostly in the pool because we were waiting for the rest of our friends to show up.
Now, amongst the rest of your friends that showed up, do you have any siblings?
I do.
And how many siblings do you have?
I have two.
And brother or sister?
I have a younger brother and a younger sister,
And with reference to your younger sister, what's her name?
Marietta.
And how much younger than you is Marietta?
She's 10 years younger than me.
And was Marietta Sullivan, was she coming in on that day as well?
She was.
And do you recall about what time it was that she arrived or that she came to the hotel? When was the first time you saw her?
It's tough to remember, but I want to say everybody showed up on one of the first or second flights that came out of Boston. So I would say she was there by 1 p.m.
And if you recall,
Only
what,
blue
if
cheese will
any,
do, blue steel
plans
Kenny.
were there as far as dinner was concerned on that evening of New Year's Eve?
So what we tend to do is book reservations, and if people are interested in joining, they can join us. And that night we had approximately 40 people going to have dinner on the beach
40
at
people?
Moomba Beach. Around, I want to say it was like 7 o'clock. We had our reservations for.
Are you planning all of this? This sounds
And
exhausting.
did Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant, Ms. Reed, join you for dinner that evening?
They did not know.
Now, let me take a step back just for a moment. As far as Ms. Reed was concerned, prior to your arrival in Aruba, did you have her phone number, or did you have any way of contacting her?
No.
And when was it that you got Ms. Reed's phone number?
John had added her and I and Chloe to a group text the night that we had gone out for dinner to make sure that we could all communicate with Chloe to make sure the kids were okay.
Chloe,
You
the
got her phone
17-year-old
number
that was
in
watching the
relation to
kids.
Watching kids as far as Patrick and Kerry and your children and everybody else.
Correct.
Now, if you recall, you go out to dinner. You think the
Chloe,
reservation
the
was about
sitter.
7 or so.
Not
Do you recall about
Chloe
what
is
time was
this.
it you
Chloe
got
has
back
not
to
been
the hotel?
rehomed. She's a teen.
I want to say it was around
Was a teen.
9:30, 10 o'clock by the time my group got back. I know there was a couple different seatings. So we probably got back around like 9:30, 10 o'clock.
And as far as your group was concerned, your sister Marietta, was she within your group that went out to dinner?
Yes. Yep.
And beyond your younger sister Marietta, did you have other sort of immediate family with you on this trip as well?
My mother was with us as well.
And with regard to your sister Marietta and your mother, what, if anything, was there as far as where were each of them staying?
So they had their own room.
Does it matter?
I think it was a couple away from us on the 5th floor.
Why does it matter where her mom is
Is that the
staying?
top floor as far as this
Oh
hotel
my
is
God.
Yes.
Now, once you arrived back from dinner,
How did we get to
where
two
was it that you and your
Chloes?
group went?
We go to the pool area. The kids can swim. We ring in the new year at the pool bar, watching it on the TVs, and then watching the fireworks.
Now, when you came back to the hotel and you went at some point to the pool area, your sister Marietta, do you know where she went?
She actually, when we got back from dinner, she went up to her room with my mom and essentially put my mom to bed because she didn't want to be up anymore. But she went to go change as well.
Now, when you
She
came
put Mom
down
to
to the pool
bed.
area, as far as
Mom,
Mr. O'Keefe and or Ms. Reed
time
was
for bed.
concerned, did you see them
No
in that
more
area?
martinis.
I saw John, I want to say around 10:30-ish. I don't know the exact time. It was definitely before midnight.
And where in relation to the hotel did you see him at 10:30?
He was standing behind me at the pool bar.
And at some point, does your sister come out to the pool area after putting your mother to bed?
Yeah, so right before I saw John at the pool bar, I saw my sister. She came out and she was visibly upset.
And Your Honor, in regard, to the instruction that you had requested about this, maybe.
All right, thank you.
Now we're getting to
So,
the
jurors, you're
instruction.
about to hear testimony about certain conduct or behavior allegedly committed by Ms. Reed. Be mindful that the defendant is not charged with committing any crimes other than those charged within the indictments. The witness's testimony may not and indeed must not be considered by you as any evidence that the defendant has a bad character or as evidence that she has a propensity to commit the crimes with which she has been charged. You may not take the defendant's prior acts as a substitute for proof that the defendant committed the crimes charged here, but you may consider the acts solely on the
motive.
limited issue of the state of mind of the defendant and the nature of her relationship with John O'Keefe as it might go to motive or intent. You may not consider this evidence for any other purpose. Specifically, you may not use it to conclude that if the defendant committed the act or acts, that she must also have committed the offenses with which she's charged. You can only use the evidence for the limited purpose of how it goes to the defendant's state of mind, the nature of her relationship with John O'Keefe, as it may go to motive. And just for the records, my findings are the same that I made at sidebar previously.
Which is it's coming in for the
Go
purpose
ahead,
of
Mr.
motive.
Lally.
Thank you.
We've seen lots of evidence that at the end of January, Karen and John were at the bar. They were happy. But this is not being offered to prove the defendant did the thing, but they are allowed to show motive. So this is going to, is this what was underlying what was going on? Let's see what it is.
Now, with regard to, at some point, your sister comes out to the pool area where you were, is that right?
Correct.
And do you know where Mr. O'Keefe was at that point?
I do not know.
And when your sister comes out to the pool area, what happened?
I bet they're going to call the sister too.
She said,
Yeah, that's sustained. I thought you were doing something else.
Well, the
When
defendant's
your sister
definitely
comes out to the pool area,
took a minute to look at
how
Lally.
would you describe her demeanor when she comes out?
No, I'll allow that.
No, she
she was
answer.
frustrated.
And at some point, did you have a conversation, without regard to what the conversation was, at some point, did you have a conversation with her about something that had just happened?
Yes.
Now, following that conversation.
We've already heard
with
some of
your
this from the victim's
At some
sister-in-law.
point, subsequent to that, Mr. O'Keefe come back out to the pool area.
After I spoke with her, yes, he came out to the pool area.
And you know about how long a period of time it was between the time that your sister came out to the pool area and Mr. O'Keefe came out to the pool area?
I mean, I would say approximately 20 minutes, but I don't really know exact timing.
Now, when Mr. O'Keefe came back out, did you have any conversation with him?
I did.
And can you describe that conversation?
All right, is this the instruction that you were talking about instead of the other one? All right, so jurors, I have another instruction for you. So you're about to hear evidence of statements made by John O'Keefe. Is that accurate now, Mr. Lally?
Yes.
All right. These statements are being admitted only for a limited purpose of establishing John O'Keefe's state of mind. You're not to consider this testimony as proof that the defendant has a bad character or propensity to commit crimes. The testimony of witnesses recounting conversations with Mr. O'Keefe can only be used as they go to the defendant's motive or intent on January 28th or 29th, and only if you find that the defendant was aware of Mr. O'Keefe's state of mind at the time of the crime and would be likely to respond to it.
I think the
There need not be
instructions
direct evidence
make
that the
it
defendant
more
learned of
dramatic.
Mr. O'Keefe's state of mind, so long as you reasonably can infer from the evidence that she did learn of it.
This was
Okay,
less
Mr.
than a
Lally.
month. This was less than a month. So this is New Year's, December 31st, 2021 to January 1st, 2022. John O'Keefe passed January 28th, 29th, 2022. So less than a month prior. So them having a fight less than a month prior in their relationship is going towards what was going on between the two of them in their relationship. So we'll see.
Subject to our objection.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Sullivan, if I could take you back again. So Mr. O'Keefe comes out, you have a conversation with him. Can you describe to the jury what that conversation was about?
I turned around and I was pretty shocked to see him. I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Nothing." I said, "Did Etta and Karen have words?" And he said, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, that's not what Etta said." And I asked him if everything was okay. And at that time, his phone was lighting up, and it looked like calls and texts, and it said Karen on his phone.
After you make that observation, what, if anything, did you say to John?
I asked him if he needed to take it, and he said, "Yes, she's crazy. I got to take care of this."
And was that the last time that you saw him on New Year's Eve?
It is.
Now, turning your attention to the following day, New Year's Day, did you see either Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed at all on that day?
I did not. I saw the children, but we didn't see them that day. No.
Now, turning your attention to the following day, being January 2nd, what was sort of the plan as far as what was going on that?
Our hotel has a private island. The hotel we stay at has a private island, and we rented all 8 of the cabanas between the 60 of us that were there. And when the cabanas went on sale, I had reached out to John and asked him if he wanted me to get him one. And he said, sure. So I booked one for him, and he paid me for that cabana. So we all went out that morning. And it was probably around, 10 o'clock in the morning, and they weren't there yet. And so I sent him a text and I said, are you coming, or do you want me to sell this cabana? Because there was other, couples there. At least he could have made, the money back. And he asked me who was there. And I said, everybody. And I named off a couple names. I'm not really sure. But I said, everybody's here.
And when you said that, how did Mr. O'Keefe respond?
He said, well, apparently I made out with your sister the other night, according to Karen.
That's why this
that
witness
the
is
first time
here.
that you had heard that?
Yes.
So fair to say whatever you had heard from your sister on December 31st was not that?
Objection.
No, I'll allow that.
Correct.
And what was your reaction when Mr. O'Keefe told you this?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
I was shocked. I immediately found my sister and said, did you make out with John?
Objection.
Sustained.
She's not allowed to say
Now,
what
when
she
you
said.
went to talk to your sister, who was it that your sister was with when you went to talk to her about that?
I don't recall who was standing near her. Maybe my mom. I don't know.
As far as your sister was concerned at that time, was she dating someone?
Yes,
And the person that she was dating, was that person
Just-
on the trip as well?
he was.
Ask
Yes.
the
And was
sister.
that person that she was dating that was on the trip as well? Were they at the cabanas on that day that you were there?
They were. Yes.
Now, as far as you have some conversation in regard to your sister, and then at some point you go back and have further conversation with Mr. O'Keefe.
Yeah, I said I texted him back. I said I just talked to Etta. She said absolutely not. That
Etta's
did
the
not
sister.
happen.
Objection. Move to strike.
That's sustained. I'll strike that.
I mean, it's for completeness at this point. We're already here. It's for completeness, Lally.
Now, at some point after that exchange,
You have to,
did Mr. O'Keefe and or Ms. Reed and
Lally, you can actually push back on the judge and say this is completeness, and to get the rest of the statement from John O'Keefe, you need to get the rest of this. I imagine they're going to call the sister next.
the
Good Lord.
kids come out through the cabana area.
They did. Yes.
And at any point, how would you describe sort of how Mr. O'Keefe?
We'll get
and
into
or
the
Ms. Reed
hearsay
was
rule
acting
of
when they
this
came out to the cabana?
later, but it's for motive.
Karen immediately went in the water. I just recall her being like floating in the ocean for a good chunk of the day. John was hopping around from the different cabanas talking to people. One of my favorite pictures of him is with my son from that day.
Did you have any conversation with Mr. O'Keefe once he came out to the cabana area?
No, we kind of just kept it light. We didn't really talk about anything that had happened. I was just kind of trying to stay out of it for now.
I mean, as one
And
does, you stay
Following
out of
sort
it.
of the cabana situation or the cabana day, what happened then?
Suppose that day, I think I saw John one other time. I saw him in the pool. It was the one time that him and I were alone. He didn't seem like he was himself.
Objection.
I'll allow it.
He seemed distant, and I asked him if he was okay. And he kind of just, shrugged it off. And I said, are you happy? And he kind of, just rolled his eyes and shrugged it off. I said, well, something along the lines of life is too short to not be happy. And he goes, well, Laura, it is what it is. And I did ask him if he wanted to talk about it. I said, do you want to talk about it? And he's like, not really.
Yeah, he knew that wasn't going to make it better.
So following that exchange in the pool area, when was the next time that you saw John?
I'd spoken to him. We all went on the Jolly Pirate.
The what?
We had all bought tickets in advance, so we had basically rented the whole boat for everybody to go. Had bought 4 tickets,
I didn't think
and
we were
we had
getting the
gotten a bus
Pirates.
from our hotel. And he didn't show up for the bus and wasn't answering my calls or my texts. And then we finally got down to where the boat was. The boat was about to leave, and he messaged me. He's like, "Not going to make it. Kids slept late." And so I didn't think anything of it. Then after that, I saw him and Karen the night before they left. And they ended up leaving a day or two early so that the kids could get back to school.
And when you saw them, where was that in relation to the hotel?
Right outside the hotel is a marketplace that has a bunch of restaurants and arcade. I was sitting at the 5 o'clock somewhere bar that looks into the arcade with my best friend Val, and my friends Dave and Laura and Karen and John walked up.
What, if any, conversation did you have with either Mr. O'Keefe or the defendant at that time?
Karen grabbed me and she said, "Hey, I'm sorry. I thought I saw something that I didn't, and I would like to pay for some of your sister's room."
And how did you respond to that?
I said, "It's absolutely not necessary. Just an apology will do."
And did she persist in wanting to pay for the room?
She did.
And how so?
She just said, I will apologize, but something along the lines of, I want to pay for some of her room. Can I just have her room number? I don't remember if I gave her the room number or not. I don't really know.
And with regard to that trip, when was the next time, or when was the last time you saw John?
So the day that they were leaving, I saw him by the pool. He came up, he gave me a big hug. He said, "I love you. This was a great trip. Thank you so much." And I said, "Well, you're definitely in again for next year." And he said, "Absolutely." And that was the last time I physically saw him.
And so that conversation, just turning back for a moment, as far as with regard to this read, you know what day that would have been, as far as in relation to when they were leaving? Early January, 32nd?
I want to say it was the 5th. I want to say it was January 5th.
Okay.
Now, after Aruba, did you have any conversation with Mr. O'Keefe after that?
I talked to him via text a couple times about a couple different things, but one of them was, as I mentioned, we start planning a year in advance. And I said, "Rooms are coming available. Are you in?" And he said, let me recover from this trip first."
I mean, and
Now, ma'am, if I could turn your attention to Saturday, January 29th, 2022. You recall that day?
I do.
And at some point that morning or during that day, did you get a call?
I did. I received a call from,
Objection.
I'll hear that she received a call
who
from someone.
called you?
I received a call from my aunt.
And what did you learn in the call from your aunt?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
That John O'Keefe had passed away.
And after you hung up the phone with your aunt, what did you do with them?
Objection.
I'll hear this subject to striking.
I called him. I called anybody's number that I had associated with the family.
Called
I ended up
everybody.
calling Kaylee. I texted Kaylee. I texted Karen.
And without any regard to what Kaylee said, did Kaylee respond to you via text?
She did.
And then at some point, did the defendant, Ms. Reed, respond to you as well?
She did.
Was that a phone call or a text, or how did she respond?
It was a text later that afternoon.
And do you recall what she said in the text that you
She said, "Hi, Laura. John has passed." And
recall what, if anything, you responded to that?
I said, "Oh my God, what happened?" And she said, "We found him in the snow at 5 a.m.
And
Which
if
we've
anything,
heard
did
from
you
others
ask her
as
for a
well.
better response?
I said, "What happened?" I just recall, kind of going into a tailspin, asking a bunch of questions. And she mentioned, she said, "I don't know. We were both at the same party. I didn't go in. I went home."
Can I have a moment, Kerry?
Yes.
Which is consistent with what the last witness said that Karen had said on the phone. I dropped him off at a party. We went to the same party. Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have nothing further for this witness. Thank you.
Yannetti doesn't even have notes. Yannetti has notes. This is going to be the shortest, of a cross. It's going to be a fairly short cross.
The Waterfall Bar and Grill on January 28th of 2022 in Canton.
I was not.
You were not present at 34 Fairview Road in Canton on January 29th of 2022.
Right.
It's not.
Yet you'll agree with me that Michael Proctor, the state police trooper, visited you at your home all the way in Pembroke, Massachusetts on February 8th of 2022
What?
to
Yes.
interview you.
Yes.
Nothing further.
It's a good cross.
Anything, Mr. Mallory?
Just briefly, as far as Trooper Proctor coming to your house,
Proctor didn't interview the car full of people that were at 34 Fairview at the same time Karen Reed's SUV was there, but tracked her down? How? What? Half these witnesses weren't even tracked down by Proctor until the Fed grand jury. But okay. Okay.
was he alone, or who, if anyone else, was he with
I
when
don't
he
give
came?
a fuck
he was with
who's
another
Proctor
trooper.
at this
Okay.
point.
Do you recall who that trooper was?
Don't care.
Trooper Fanning.
Nothing further on.
Right.
Your next witness, Mr. Mallory?
The
Yes, Your Honor. The
sister-
Commonwealth call Miss Marietta Sullivan.
Yep.
Counsel, I'll see you while we're waiting for this witness.
Yeah. Are we going to ask how much longer? Because the next witness is Brian Higgins. So are we really doing this today? That was a good cross. Yannetti was just like, so Trooper Proctor found you, right? Yeah. He was able to come talk to you. And the sister's going to be like, what? She apologized.
My name.
Truth, the whole truth, and
I
nothing
like her
but the truth,
jacket.
so help you God.
I do.
Chad, are you persuaded about anything? Does this help you at all?
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Sure. My name is Marietta Sullivan. Last name is Sullivan.
And where do you live?
With 42.
Right now I live in Plymouth.
And how long have you lived in Plymouth?
Since July of the past summer, so not even a year yet.
And do you work there?
I do.
And what do you do?
I'm a director at a memory care community.
How long have you been doing that?
Just over a year.
She's like, can you miss me with all of this? Not me putting words in her
Do you
mouth, but
have
also
any,
me putting words in her
siblings?
mouth.
I do.
And how many siblings do you
I have two,
have? Older, younger?
both older,
And brothers?
She's like, do I
and
really need to be
brother
here?
and sister,
And your sister, what is her?
Laura Sullivan.
New Year's, specifically
I don't know why that jumped. That might have been the feed. That was weird.
Yourself and your sister Laura.
We are 10 years apart.
Now, if I could turn your attention
How do you
to,
feel about blue cheese stuffed olives?
unions, specifically 2021 into 2022. Do you recall that time frame?
I do.
And do you recall where it was that you were or where you were going for that time?
Yes, sir. We were going to Aruba for a family trip.
And is that sort of an annual family trip?
It has become since then. It was the first time I had attended.
And, do
Lally?
you recall sort of the time frame on that trip as far as
We
when you were
don't.
leaving, when you were coming back?
We don't need. Any
So
of-
we left on Friday the 31st, and we returned the next week, Friday the 7th.
We're going to
And when you say we,
1.25.
who's we?
My mother and I flew out together with another group of people to meet my sister and brother-in-law down in Aruba.
Great. We're going to
And, at
1.25.
that time,
Because
so you meet them down there,
seriously.
had your sister Laura, had she flown down prior to you?
She had, yes.
And at that particular time, were you dating someone?
I was seeing somebody, yes.
And the person that you were seeing, was that person coming on the trip as well?
He was, yeah, the day after we got there.
So your sister arrives on the 30th, you arrive on the 31st, and the person you were seeing arrives on the 1st.
Yes.
Now, when you arrive there, do you know about how many people were on this trip?
I would say over 30, upwards of,
800.
Yeah, I would say over 30 is the best estimate I could give you.
70 million
As
people
far
were
as
on this
was
trip.
concerned, do you recall where you stayed?
yep, we stayed at the Renaissance Aruba.
We know.
Is that someone that you stayed on this occasion as well, subsequent occasion?
Oh my
Yes.
God, Lally.
And on
Nobody
the
cares.
31st, when you and your mother arrived, do you recall about what time of day it was that you got there?
So our flight landed around 3:30-ish. I would say we weren't at the hotel much later than that.
I'm so glad your flight got in safely. Chat, the chocolate peanut butter protein bars that have been my sustenance throughout this trial, in addition to the donuts, is balanced.
What is that?
They're pretty good.
What is it like?
Sure. So right when you walk in the front doors, right in
That's
front of
what I
you
mean.
is the check-in desks.
Oh my
3 or 4 of
God.
them in front of you. To the left of you, when you come in, is a hallway to one side of the hotel. To the right of you is a bank of elevators. that leads
Ma'am,
to
it's
another
not
hallway
you.
That leads to the other first floor.
It's
side
not
of
you,
the
it's
hotel.
him.
You're in a big lobby, and then directly across from where
It's
the
Lally.
elevators are is the entrance to the pool area.
This poor jury has
When
to
you
be like,
arrive
who the
on there,
fuck
when you arrive
cares?
there at some point in time on the late afternoon of the 31st, you obviously check into your room,
Mhm.
and then following that, where do you go?
So we checked into our room, and then happy hour was starting around 4:30. So we met everybody down at the pool for that time.
Great.
Is there a bar in that area of the pool?
Yes, pool bar.
And so when you get down to the pool bar area, who, if anyone specifically, did you see or did you run into?
Who, if anyone?
So first ran into my sister, gave her a hug, the rest of the kids and my brother. As soon as I got into the pool, I ran into Johnny and a couple of our other friends that were sitting at the pool bar down there.
And with reference to who you refer to as Johnny, what's his last name?
John O'Keefe.
And that was someone that you knew at the time, is that correct?
Yes.
And how did you know his story?
He was a very, very dear family friend. He was very close to my sister, subsequently became very close to me and my family as a result.
I put
And he
this
was my nephew's godfather.
to normal speed.
And fair to say that you had known him for some substantial period of time.
Yeah, since Ben's father unfortunately passed away.
So at this point in time, when we're talking about turning from 2021 to 2022, how long had you known Mr. O'Keefe at that point?
Oh man, probably about 8-9 years. It's as long as my nephew's been alive.
And when is it that you would see, or how often would you see Mr. O'Keefe?
Family parties, any family party that we threw, kids' birthday parties, and my sister's Christmas party that she would throw every year.
And how would you describe?
'Cause he was a great
the nature
godfather.
of your relationship with Mr. O'Keefe?
He was similar to a big brother to me. He was somebody who was there for my sister during her darkest times. So I really respected him for that. But yeah, he was a big brother and a family friend.
It sounds like he did that for a lot of people. I appreciate
Now,
getting
when
to
you
know more
saw
about
Mr.
the
O'Keefe
victim
at
in
the
this
pool bar
context
after you arrived there,
and how many people
what, if any,
lost
conversations did you have with him?
John
What, if
O'Keefe
any,
from their
things
life.
were you doing around that?
So I went up to him in the pool.
I don't
He had
know if
his
this
Alabama
fight
hat on.
is
He
the
expressed to
thing.
me that he was excited to watch the Alabama football game at the pool bar. Given the circumstances, we were in a beautiful tropical place, and he got to watch his favorite college team play football. And he said that's all he really wanted to do for the day was
I'm
be able to
honestly
watch that game.
surprised Lally didn't ask about who won that football game.
Now,
Truthfully.
at this point in time,
The chat has already told
that
us.
you talked to Mr. O'Keefe, were you aware of him dating anybody? Had you met anybody that he was dating at that time?
I had not met the person that he was dating. I had heard about her through family friends and other people that were on the trip.
So as far as the other sort of family events that you would see Mr. O'Keefe at, Ms. Reed or his girlfriend at that time.
Yeah, the chat does want to go to Aruba.
No.
It was the pirate ship for me. The pirate ship did it, chat. What if anything are we pausing for, Lally? Do you not know what questions you're asking her?
Pool bar that afternoon. Do you recall what else you did that evening?
Yep. So most of us in the group had dinner reservations. I believe they were around 7 p.m. and we were all getting ready to leave the pool bar to get picked up around 6:30.
And as far as a fairly large group that went out to dinner that night?
Yeah, most of us.
And was Mr. O'Keefe part of that group that went out to dinner?
He was not.
Do you recall about what time it was that you got back to her?
I think now would be an espresso martini.
Most of us got back a little after 9. Taxis were kind of crazy to get, so little after 9.
And when you got back to the hotel, where did you go?
I went upstairs to check on my mom. She had gone in a bank of taxis before me, so I went upstairs to make sure that she was up there and safe and in the room.
And so how
had mom been drinking martinis?
Mother, at some point, did you come back?
I did.
It's like, Mom,
And
time for
when you came
bed.
Back down. By down, I mean, do you recall where you were staying in the hotel?
Yep. So we were on the 4th floor of the
Oh my
hotel. So I took the
God.
elevator up and then I took it back down to the lobby.
And at that point in time, when you're getting back from dinner and going up to the room and coming back down, were you aware of where Mr. O'Keefe and his niece and nephew were staying?
I knew where they were staying. Yes, room wise. Yep.
And where was that in relation to the lobby?
First floor.
So lobby's on the first floor.
They
the
had
rooms are on
swim
the
out
first floor.
rooms,
Yes.
which sounds lovely,
So when the elevator gets down
or
to
walkout
the-
rooms, or whatever.
When the elevator gets down to the lobby level, you get out, is that correct?
Mhm.
And what if any?
So you have to say, okay.
She thinks the question is
answer
stupid
yes.
too,
Yes,
Your
sorry.
Honor.
That's okay. So the elevator gets sent down to the lobby, you walk out, who, if anyone, do you see when you come out?
So when the elevator opens up, the first person I saw was the attendant standing behind the desk. I didn't see anybody else in the lobby with me until I stepped out. When I stepped out, I looked to my left and I saw Johnny coming in through the first set of outside doors.
Now, as far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned, was there any other sort of term that you would use to refer to him?
The
Johnny or Godfather.
Yeah.
And,
Everything we've heard about the victim has been incredibly
All
endearing.
right, so folks, I'm going to say again, that first instruction I gave you at the last, committed by, in the inserted by you, they have a prior acts, but you
Same
may consider
instruction
the nature
that
to
we just
conclude that
heard.
if the defendant committed these acts, use the evidence for the limited relation.
Same
you walk out of the
instructions.
elevator, you're by yourself, correct?
Yes.
And,
We
you see
zoomed.
Mr. O'Keefe,
I
you
literally
see
can't.
Where Mr. O'Keefe was in relation to the lobby.
Here's what we've heard about Karen. That she spoiled the kids and she and John would fight over it. That she bought everybody dinner and was glad to be on the trip. That John took care of the people in his life. That when they fought, they seemed to also make up. So what did this witness write? I don't know. It might have been her last name or the spelling of her last name for the court reporter. I don't know.
He was coming from the outside doors into the lobby,
And then
Is that where the
they
pool bar
got in a
located?
fight in Aruba
opposite side.
that we've heard from multiple
Yes.
people now.
And when you see him come in, who, if anyone, do you see with him initially?
Nobody with him.
And what, if anything, was he doing, or how was he acting sort of when he came?
She did not go to the dinner
So
that was
he
paid for. She wasn't there
Sort
yet.
of stumbled in. I came out of the elevator and my initial response to him was, "Whoa, you okay?" I actually said, "Whoa, God."
What?
So he sort of stumbled in. I came out of the elevator and my initial response to him was, "Whoa, you okay?" I actually said, "Whoa, God."
What is happening to this feed right now? Even the feed's exhausted. Hold on. We're at whoa. I'm gonna refresh the
Keith.
feed. Give me a second. Because I imagine we're gonna be very close to the end of the day here. Let's see if we can get back to. Whoa.
Yeah, I would say over 30 is the best estimate I could give you.
That's how many people are on the trip.
As far as this trip was concerned.
Oh, we're
do
close.
you recall where you stayed?
Yep, we stayed at the Renaissance Aruba.
Is that somewhere?
All right, I'm going to zoom a little bit and see if we can get to where we're supposed to be.
It's as long as my nephew's been alive.
All right, we were even closer than that. This witness has to be almost done then. Oh, she's writing something down. We're going to find out what, since we're here. The court reporter gave her pen and paper.
Conduct of behavior allegedly committed by the defendant. Ms. Reed is not charged with committing any crimes other than those charged within the indictment. So
The court
this
reporter
witness's
asked her for
testimony
something.
may not and must not be considered by you as any evidence that the defendant has a bad character
What?
or as evidence that she may have a propensity to commit the crimes with.
He kept looking around and he indicated that he was going that way.
Okay, so we're at the victim stumbling.
What happened then?
I pulled back. He was,
Stumbling. Right.
yeah, he was stumbling into the lobby.
All right.
And when you see him come in, who, if anyone, do you see with him?
We've found
Nobody
it.
with him.
And what, if anything, was he doing, or how was he acting?
I'm sure she wrote down her first name for the court
So
reporter.
he-
Yeah, Chad.
Sort of stumbled in. I came out of the elevator and my initial response to him was, "Whoa, you okay?" I actually said, "Whoa, Godfather, are you okay?"
There we go.
But yeah,
Fingers
he
crossed.
was stumbling into the lobby.
And did you go over to him at that point?
I did. I went up to him and I gave him a hug.
And what happened then?
I pulled back. He was glassy-eyed, looking above me. We never made eye contact. He was looking above me. It looked like he was looking for someone. I asked him, "Where are you going?" assuming that he would be coming to the pool bar to meet us. He kept looking around and he indicated that he was going that way and pointed toward a bank of rooms to our right. And I said, "Well, you should go that way." And I stepped back and I guided him toward the area that he was going.
Now, as far as the bank of rooms to the right, you indicated that you were familiar or aware of where Mr. O'Keefe was and where the children were. Is that correct?
I know they were on the first floor. I'm not 100% positive as to where exactly their rooms were.
And if you know, did you know whether or not that Mr. O'Keefe was staying in the same room as Patrick and Kaylee at that point?
I didn't know that
Oh
they
my
were staying
God,
in the
who
same room or
cares?
not, no.
So you point him in that direction, and what happened?
So I pointed in that direction. He walked off. I continued out to the pool bar when I heard very loudly his name screamed across the lobby very angrily, and it made me stop in my tracks.
And when you stop in your tracks, what happened?
I started to turn around to come back in. So once you go out to the pool bar, you kind of go around a corner and you go out of view. So I turned around to go back in. As I'm going back in, I hear someone yell, "Who the fuck was that?" And as I come around the corner, I see Mr. O'Keefe walking toward a woman. And he said, excuse me. He said, "Calm down, that's Laura's little sister."
And what happened then?
When I came back around the corner, I said, after Mr. O'Keefe said, "Calm down, that's Laura's little sister," I said, "Hi, nice to meet you." That's when Miss Reed's head snapped up, and she very loudly told me to go fuck myself across the lobby. And I said, "Yeah, fuck you too," and walked away.
Okay.
And just to be clear, when you say Miss Reed, this is someone that you became familiar with as the trip went along?
This was my first interaction with her. I had never been fully introduced to her at all. I just had seen her sitting by the side of the pool
They just
when I had
screamed,
been talking
"Fuck
to
yous"
Johnny
at each
earlier in
other.
the day.
And the person you know to be Miss Reed, do you see her in the courtroom today?
I do.
Could you just describe as to where she's seated or what article of clothing that she's wearing?
Sure. She's in a black and white checkered blazer. She's 2 people in from you.
Just ask the record to reflect identification and defended by the witness.
Yes.
Thank you. As far as Ms. Reed was concerned, what, if anything, did you observe as far as the defendants beyond the yelling? What, if anything, did you observe as far as her demeanor or how she was acting at the time?
Pissed, apparently.
She was just very loud. She very, energetically screamed for me to go fuck myself. She was waving her hands. Johnny was trying to calm her down. And after I said, yeah, fuck you too, I went out to the pool bar. So I didn't see much after that.
Go fuck yourself.
And
Fuck
did
you
hear
too,
anything as far
Karen.
as when you were walking out to the pool bar,
Everybody
as far
was
as any other
drinking.
Conversation between the defendant and
Okay.
Not after that first time, no.
you go back to the, or you go out to the pool bar, and who, if anyone, did you talk to?
I went straight up to my older sister, Laura, who was out to dinner with the couple the night before. And I said,
What the fuck?
I'll allow this part.
She said, what the fuck?
I went up to her and I looked at her and I said, John O'Keefe's girlfriend. And she looked at me and said, Karen. And I said, yeah, you guys like her? She said, yeah, she's okay. And I said, well, she sucks.
Okay.
Now, following that, at any point in time later in that evening, did you see either Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed later on that evening?
I did not see them, no.
And when was the next time that you did see them?
I saw them briefly on the 2nd, which was the day that we rented cabanas on the island.
And when you say you briefly saw them, about, can you describe it?
So we had all rented the cabanas. Each family had one or they were sharing one. I was sharing one with my family down at the end. We got about halfway through the day and realized that their family cabana was still empty. So I saw them about halfway through the day when they did come to the cabana, and I briefly saw Miss Reed and Mr. O'Keefe at the pool, the island bar that same day, but there was no conversation.
Now, with regard to Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed, at some point in time on that day of the cabanas, what, if any, conversation did you have with your sister regarding that?
So my
Objection.
Did you talk to your sister about it?
I'll see you at sidebar quickly.
The judge is like, can we just move on? We have now heard 3 people testify about the fight in Aruba. I imagine this will be the end of it.
Be mindful of that second instruction that I gave you regarding evidence of statements made by John O'Keefe for the limited purpose of establishing his state of mind. And I will fully give you this instruction again at the end of the case.
Okay.
So, but it's the same one that I already gave you. Go ahead, Mr. Lally.
Ms. Sullivan, with regard to the day at the cabanas, did you have some conversation with your sister Laura in regard to Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed?
I did.
And what, if anything, did your sister Laura tell you she had learned from Mr. O'Keefe?
So my sister pulled me aside from everybody and asked if the night that I got into the altercation with Miss Reed in the lobby, if I was making out with Mr. O'Keefe.
I mean, was it an altercation or did they?
That I
scream at
absolutely
each
was
other?
not.
And when you say absolutely was not, beyond the fact that it didn't occur, why would that not occur?
He was,
I'll allow it.
he was family. He was my older brother. For all intents and purposes, it just never would have happened between us.
She's like, seriously, oh.
And you expressed that to your sister, is that correct?
I did, yes.
Now, as far as the remainder of the trip was concerned, starting with the defendant, Ms. Reed, what, if any, other interaction did you have with her?
None.
And
I would
as
imagine
far
that's
as, Mr. O'Keefe was concerned, what, if any, further interaction did you have with him?
None. That was it.
And was that
it.
normal or as far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
That, as far as I knew Johnny, that wasn't normal. He would always come up to us, up to our family, try to be around my nephew, his godchild, and he was always the life of the party and wanted to be around his family and his friends.
And following that trip in Aruba, did you see Mr. O'Keefe again?
I did not.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Giannetti.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I wonder when she was interviewed by Proctor. Can we just skip to that
Good
question?
afternoon.
Fair to say that you were not at the Waterfall Bar and Grill on January 28th of 2022 in Canton.
I was not.
you were not at 34 Fairview Road in Canton on January 29th, correct?
Was not.
Yet Trooper Proctor drove all the way to Pembroke to interview you on February 8th of 2022. Did he not?
He did.
Nothing further.
Ms.
Smart
Lally,
cross.
anything?
Just very briefly. Ms. Sullivan, when Trooper Proctor came to
It
the house
doesn't
in
make it
Pembroke,
better,
were you
Lally.
living there at that time?
I was.
And was he alone or was he with another trooper?
He was with another trooper.
And do you recall that trooper's name?
I don't.
Now, with regard to your conversation with Trooper Proctor and the other trooper that day, was it just you that he spoke to?
Just me.
Um,
Let me ask it a different way.
Okay.
The answer's
As
going to
far
be the
as-
same.
When the troopers came to your house on February 8th, are you the only person from your home that the troopers spoke to that day?
No.
And who, if anyone else, did they speak to in the home?
They spoke to my sister first.
And at any point, did they speak to your sister's boyfriend as well?
No.
And when they spoke to you, and when they spoke to you, where was your sister?
She was outside of the house. She went to go pick up my nephew.
Okay.
And when they spoke to your sister, where were you?
I was downstairs in my room, which was in the basement.
And could you hear what they were talking about when they were talking to your sister?
I could not.
Nothing further.
All right, Ms. Sullivan, you're all set.
Thank you.
All right, so jurors, we're actually
End of the day.
finished with witnesses for today. We've finished everyone that we had hoped to finish for today. So we're done for the day. As you know, we're not in session tomorrow, but we will see you Friday, and Friday will be a full day.
Ugh.
So please, those 3 cautions,
Can we
do
not-
discuss this case with anyone. Don't do any independent research or investigation into the case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about the case, please disregard it, let us know. Just leave everything here, literally, figuratively, clear your heads, and we'll see you Friday night. Thank you very much.
All right.
No court on Thursday. Full day on Friday. Your Honor, I have things on Friday. Friday's busy. Can we do a full day tomorrow? Can we switch it, please? We're going to hear from Brian Higgins on Friday, chat, but I'm going to be a bit late.
that makes sense.
You may be seated.
Thank you.
All right, so hopefully we will start and finish that one witness on Friday anyway, but
Higgins.
have a second witness here.
I'll have at least a couple other witnesses, Your Honor.
Okay, but it would be great if we could complete the testimony of that one witness for all sorts of reasons.
I will do my best. I'm hopeful. I am. I'm hopeful.
Okay. Anything I need to look at or anything in particular for Friday?
Probably, but I can't think of it.
May we approach this briefly?
Okay.
Why? The jury's out. Why? Also, I hate that it's a full day on Friday before a holiday weekend. For everyone involved. So, and because it's going into a holiday weekend, I was very hopeful that they would maybe flop those days around, but they did not. So, Friday's going to be interesting. I'm going to see if they come back. It looks like this feed is just about to end. I'm going to see if they put anything else on the record. I'm not optimistic that they do. I just want to see if the judge leaves the bench. Nope, the feed just cut. Well, they were still at sidebar. Hold on. I'm never sure. Nope, there's the judge leaving the bench. I'm never sure until the judge just leaves the bench. And then the schedule from here is going to get really funky with days off because of the holiday. So I'm going to remind you, if you are enjoying trial coverage and you are enjoying trial coverage here, as the schedule gets weird going into the next weeks, Leonard app, I will let you know when and where and why. So LeonardApp.com or in your app store, I will let you know when witnesses take the stand and when I'm streaming if you want to watch it here. So I will be starting late on Friday. I don't know how late on Friday. And we are going to do a full day on Friday. I'll go through lunch like we did last week when I needed to delay for a meeting. So I have I have stuff I need to do on Friday. So that's what we're doing on Friday. I'll start late. I'm not sure how late. And then we will plow through. Sorry, mods. It's going to be a long day on Friday, but it'll give us some time to zoom. And I definitely don't want to miss the testimony of Brian Higgins. So we're not going to miss it, but we are going to start late. I'm going to try to do a summary of these witnesses real quick. And then next week, we are only in session Tuesday. It's also going to be a late start for me on Tuesday, and I will get that figured out. We have just lots going on this week. So, chat, I should file an amicus with the court and say, no, we object to Friday. It's a holiday weekend, but no court tomorrow, which will be helpful. You know what, Miguelina, let me know in the chat if we just want to put the podcast live tomorrow. We can put it live today, chat. We could put it live tomorrow, though. It's already 3:00. Miguelina, ask Zeke what he thinks. We can decide. Maybe we'll just put the podcast up tomorrow. The podcast for tomorrow is dealing with whether or not the indictment for Alec Baldwin would get thrown out, and what's going on with Corey Richards in Utah, because there was a lot of tea there. As gossipy as this case has become, there's a lot of it in the Corey Richards case too, with her paramour. So I think we just do it tomorrow. The chat has said tomorrow. Yeah, let's just do it tomorrow. We'll just set it for tomorrow at 11. Perfect. Everybody's like, do it tomorrow. Love it, chat. You guys are the best. Okay, let's see if we can summarize the afternoon's testimony. Coming back from lunch on day 16. Now at the, no, I want to do that. I want to do that differently. Chat, I beg your indulgence. At the end of the day, on day 16 of the Commonwealth versus Karen Read, we finished with Kerry Roberts, and the defense offered no cross-examination at all of Kerry Roberts. I think it was a smart move. I think the witness came across very credible. She contradicted some of the testimony of Jen McCabe. She was very straightforward. I imagine that there was not much there, not part of the text messages. We know she turned over her phone for a cell phone extraction. Nothing was brought up there. Could the defense recall her in their case? They could, but I don't know why they would need to. I'm surprised, very surprised, that this wasn't one of the state's first witnesses. I thought she was a great witness for, well, both the state and the defense. She seemed to call it like it is and not exaggerate. She didn't editorialize or elaborate. She said what she saw. But you know what she never heard was Karen Read saying, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. She seemed absolutely, genuinely devastated for the loss of her friend, John O'Keefe. She seemed frustrated about having to testify at all, truly, and by some of Lally's questions. And she made the chaos of the morning when Karen Read was calling everyone trying to figure out what was going on make a bit more sense. She talked about Karen constantly blowing up her phone while Karen was at the hospital and while she was at the hospital, and trying to figure out what was going on with John. We also heard about Karen Read blowing up John's cell phone when they were on vacation over New Year's, going into the year of 2022, with the two witnesses that testified at the end of the day, the Sullivans. And the Sullivan sisters testified about their family connection to John. Oh, I don't want to forget. The older sister, Laura Sullivan, had been dating John O'Keefe's best friend, fellow Boston police officer, who is the father of her son. John O'Keefe is the godfather of her son, and John O'Keefe's best friend and her son's father had passed away. She talked about that and how involved in her life and her son's life John O'Keefe was since then, which brings to me another kid in this case who lost someone who was very close to them. And it brought in a lot more of the priority that John O'Keefe put on those he considered family and the kids in his life that he loved. And then we got into testimony about the trip in Aruba that we had heard John O'Keefe's sister-in-law testify to, that he and Karen Reed got into a huge argument about it. And that testimony was that John was accused by Karen Reed of making out with Laura Sullivan's little sister, Etta Sullivan. Etta testified that John was in the lobby, seemingly intoxicated and stumbling, and gave her a hug. And then as she was walking away, she heard John's name being screamed in the lobby, and something like, "Who the fuck is that?" And he was like, "Calm down." When I'm saying he was like, she was like, this is how the testimony came in. "Calm down. That's Laura's little sister." And then she was like, you know, "Go fuck yourself." And then Etta was like, "Well, fuck you too." And that's really all they spoke. And then Etta told her sister Laura, you know, "I don't know if you guys like John O'Keefe's new girlfriend, but she sucks." And that was what the fight in Aruba was about. Laura also testified that Karen apologized, that she offered to pay for part of Etta's room, and that she seemed to regret and misinterpret the situation. So that's where we are with the fight in Aruba. And that was the end of the testimony on day 16. Court is dark on Thursday and will resume on Friday, presumably with the testimony of John Higgins. So, not John Higgins, Brian Higgins. And that I am very interested to see. I want to know how he has a magical disappearing Jeep. I want to know. I want to know all of this stuff. So, let's get to your questions, shall we? Where is my question? We're going to fack around. And chat, for those of you who want to believe Chloe, the dog, was the babysitter in Aruba, I'm not going to disabuse you of that. I'm gonna just let it stand. I'm gonna let it stand. You know what stands out a lot in this case? Drinking. People were drinking. There was drinking. There was drinking. People were drinking. People didn't always behave well while drinking. Okay. So I'm just, yeah, it is what it is. Cleopatra said, question, no court tomorrow and Thursday. Tomorrow is Thursday. Today's Wednesday, right? Tomorrow's Thursday. No court tomorrow. Court full day Friday. No court Monday. Court on Tuesday. No court the rest of next week. So that is a lot. Corrine in the chat asked, why was the loss of John's friend relevant? It explained again that John stepped into the role of the godfather parent for his godson. It also goes to why this witness, I think why that witness, Laura, was so anxious on the stand and so emotional talking about it. Sometimes you need to explain and allow it, but it really does show the loss in this case, because I mean, maybe at some point we'll get to answers with the loss in this case, but the loss of the victim has not always been at the forefront, and it isn't always at the forefront of criminal trials, because you're trying to figure out what the defendant did and if the crimes that are charged are what the defendant did and if they'll be convicted of them. So sometimes it can get a little bit lost, and these witnesses brought back a bit of who the victim was into this case. I don't know if the jury's going to be persuaded by this fight, or if the jury's going to look at this and be like, and people were drinking and on vacation, and Karen got mad and told somebody to go fuck themselves, and they said, fuck you, and but also, I don't know if, I don't know. I need a lot more evidence from the prosecution. I am waiting to see it. That fight in Aruba is not going to be enough to sway me. I don't know if it's going to sway everybody else, but at this point, it feels like the testimony that was most helpful from all of what was going on in Aruba is that when Karen was angry or stressed or freaked out or pissed off or whatever, that she was blowing up people's phones, which seemed like what she was doing when she was looking for John. It seems to give context to them being like, oh, down the road, this is where like the dance instructor's house is. And Karen being like, wait, could she have been there? And then continuing to blow up John's phone. So the blowing up the phone seems consistent. And the kind of making more out of a situation is consistent, that she blew up about the hug and was like, what the fuck? But also when she woke up in the morning and didn't see John, she was like, what the fuck? And that the stress is part of a pattern of behavior. I don't know if that really establishes much beyond that. So yeah, it's a lot, but it seems that after the fact, both of the last two witnesses don't have much love lost for Karen Reed. So how I saw a lot of questions about how were they able to get into what John said, what Karen said, and the rest of it, because of exceptions to the hearsay rule. It was being offered not to say this is the truth of what John said, but it was being offered for motive or intent of the defendant as it pertains to the intentional homicide. I don't know. I still don't know what happened. Like, we still don't know what happened to the victim. So it's really hard to know if that motive or intent carries over. They were fighting. And then by the time they got to the waterfall, they weren't fighting. And they had a lovely evening, and they were making plans to go on vacation again. And even at the end of the trip to Aruba, John said that was fun, count us in for next year. So obviously whatever blow up there was resolved. People have fights in relationships. So I just don't know if it's more than that. But it does seem like a lot of the group maybe didn't welcome Karen with open arms and were protective of John. Daphne Lansborough said, I organized my closet well on lunch break. Good for you. I look at some things and thought, what was I thinking? Liking that sweater or shirt feels good to purge things. It always does. Cleaning out the closet is always helpful. I did that last week. Defense wants Jen to stand out, not Kerry. That's a very good point, Leah, about why no cross-examination of Kerry. I think Kerry was a good witness for this case. Again, I don't know if it's going to help us get to the truth of what happened here, but I thought she was a good witness. I don't think any of the I have not seen a single witness that I've gone, that witness really puts it together for the prosecution. The amount of puzzle pieces we have to get here is substantial. Kerry might be on the defense witness list. I don't know if they'll call her. I don't know. No cross. Kerry discredited Jen McCabe, so not needed. I think it was smart. It takes a certain amount of confidence as an attorney to do no cross. I thought Yannetti's crosses of these two witnesses, the last two witnesses, were great. So you weren't there. But Proctor went and interviewed you, didn't he? The defense allowed the witnesses that are supposed to be showing motive, which is incredible strategy. The witnesses that are supposed to be showing motive, the defense used those witnesses to show that Proctor maybe cherry-picked who he interviewed, because didn't interview anyone in Ricky's truck, did he? There were interviews that he didn't do until after the feds found them. That was tremendously well played. The The prosecution has to know what's coming. I still don't know. There's a bunch of witnesses where I'm looking at these witnesses going, why did you call them? But then there's times I feel like the prosecution's like, we're just going to put everybody up. But it's a murder case. You don't just throw everything against the wall and see what sticks. It's a homicide prosecution that was upgraded. This originally was filed as an under the influence collision causing death and a hit and run causing death. And then they upgraded it to a second degree homicide. Why? Why? I still want to know why. Enraged Bacon said, so this is why we have the elevator yes charge, because of a misunderstanding in Aruba 3 weeks prior when Miss Reed apologized for. I don't know. I don't know if this is why we have the elevated charge. EDB, you missed it. Sister gave Karen huge side eye when you were looking down writing. I saw a couple side eyes. It doesn't seem that there was love lost there, but I also don't think she was being untruthful. I don't think she likes Karen at all. And I don't know if it's she doesn't like Karen, she doesn't like the defense team, she doesn't like what's going on with all of this case. There's stuff with this case that just is a lot. This case has been very divisive locally. For those of you that live locally that have reached out, this case has been difficult for everyone. I'm really becoming more and more concerned that we're not going to, at the end of the case, feel like there's answers. And I don't like sitting in that unknown. Steve said, Kerry said there was grass under him. Why blood on top of the snow that needed a leaf blower and red evidence cup collections? It doesn't track. Anything I say, Steve, is going to be speculation. And I have been trying not to speculate. She absolutely said there was blood. There was grass under him, and that they had towels or blankets from the back of the SUV. We saw one of the officers picking those up, but we also don't know if those drops of blood were to the side of where the victim was, because nobody measured anything. So it's really tough to get a sense of where that was collected from. And I don't know if it was ever tested, so we don't know if it belongs to the victim. So I don't know. I just don't know. But also body heat, if there wasn't that much snow, could have melted snow. I just don't know. But yes, there is confusion. With everything, there are more questions than answers, and the more we talk, there are more questions. I was expecting another Jen McCabe with this witness, but I have been pleasantly surprised, not helping with the prosecution's case, in my opinion, though. Mikkel, I really think the closest we have to what happened when Karen Reed woke up and started calling everyone is Kerry Roberts' testimony. Helene, thank you for the gifted memberships. Beth said, do you think Kerry could be telling the truth and Jen McCabe is just hoping that nothing Kerry says will make them look bad? Yeah, could. Captain We the Barmy, hey girl, Kerry equals facts, Jen equals fuckery. There was a lot of fuckery in Jen's testimony, wasn't there? So the blood was still fresh after all those hours. Rare Gem 0918. I talked about this a little before the break. Again, this is speculation on my part, but we know from the ambulance drivers that there was quite a large amount of blood and fluid that needed to be taken out of the victim's airway. And I believe all the witnesses when they say that Karen ran over to John and immediately went to lay on him. So it could be that just pushed out what was in his upper airway when they started to do chest compressions and when they started to do mouth to mouth. So it could be that's why it is still fresh. I'm very curious at this point what the ME said. It seems that he had quite a serious head injury, which very well could account for the eyes, but I don't know if that head injury would be consistent with falling on grass. I need the scientific evidence. I just need the scientific evidence. I need the scientific evidence at this point. So, and she said he was bleeding from the back of the head. I need to hear from the coroner. I need to hear from the experts at this point because I have lots and lots and lots of questions. So, but the internal injuries and the amount of blood fluid could very much be why it seems still fresh and not frozen. Casey Katz said, I absolutely believe the cops sectioned her to keep her away from anyone who would protect her and to get a warrant for a blood draw they couldn't get a warrant for. I mean, if they couldn't get a warrant for it, then they probably couldn't get a warrant for it. We're going to see about the blood draw. I imagine that's going to be fought over if they took her blood, but it doesn't seem like they admitted her per the Section 12. So I don't know how that all went down because we just haven't gotten to any of that evidence. They called the bartender to testify and never asked how many drinks Karen Read had. I don't know if anyone's going to base in Massachusetts, it's operating under the influence OUI, but a DUI, OUI, whatever you call it in your jurisdiction, on Karen's statement to Kerry, I don't remember the night before we were all drinking. That's not going to be, I think, sufficient evidence to show that she was driving under the influence. Because again, I still am not clear that Karen's the one who drove from the waterfall to Fairview. So I still have a ton of questions. Mary T said, did anybody else hear Alan say the voicemail was from John's phone yesterday? Alan said it quickly and quietly. I do not remember that, but it seemed that that's where it is from based on, it seems that Karen was calling him. And now with this testimony, we now have more backing that Karen calling the victim repeatedly makes sense, and then saw him and dropped the phone in the car and ran, and the phone was still recording. So, yes. Angela said Lolly's strategy is a Paula Abdul song, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. It's tough. Lindsay Bay said, EDB, it's funny. Kerry Roberts is not coming across as Jen McCabe seemed to imply. Not at all. Nope. At least to me, I'm finding it ironic, but first impressions are everything. Sad for the loss of her friend, John O'Keefe. It did seem that Jen was trying to change the impression, maybe, of Kerry. You guys let me know if you think that too. That she was trying to be like, she's a talker, she's telling them everything, like, whatever. It definitely seemed like there was an impression there that was had. Karen said she left John O'Keefe at the waterfall and dropped him at 34 Fairview. Karen said to them that she dropped him at the waterfall, but then later it seems that she said she didn't know. Karen didn't say she went to 34 Fairview until Jen said it to her. So for all of you talking about whether or not Corey Richins in the other case, the Corey Richins case, yes, Corey Richins' defense attorneys are gone. That's this week's podcast, and that will be out tomorrow. But yes, it seems that happened quickly after May 15th. There's a lot of tea there. That's tomorrow's. That's the podcast. The audio version is up. The video will be up tomorrow. So if you want to listen to it, you can go to your audio apps and listen to it. So Sienna said, honestly, I think the contrast between Kerry and Jen speaks for itself, especially the detail about Jen saying she saw Karen and John at the house trying to get more from Kerry might sour the jury. Yeah, I think Kerry is one of the most reliable witnesses we've seen in all of this. Rachel says, I go to the islands with 30 people, love it, but so much planning. The planning sounds exhausting. Like if somebody else planned the trip and we're like, girl, you coming? I might say yes, but the planning sounds exhausting. Like exhausting. Grace said, don't fall for timeshares. It seems that they were buying timeshares from people who have them. The Great Big Geek says this feels more like a victim impact statement than testimony. Parts of it absolutely did. Christina said, this makes me so angry for John O'Keefe. Sister died, brother-in-law died, best friend died, and he found him. But nobody seems to care that this investigation was shit from the start. He deserves better. He does deserve better. The law nerds care very much. I think the chat has been properly skeptical of this investigation. because it's not a good investigation. And I don't know if I'm going to change my mind on that because I don't know what's coming. But I'm not optimistic that I'm going to change my mind on that. Spock's brainworms, but not crossing Miss Roberts to me makes it feel like the defense is trying to say we aren't arguing for the sake of it. When the witness is honest, we have nothing to say. Right. Doesn't it leave the impression like there's nothing here? Like there's no here. There's no there. A lot of super chats saying John seems like a lovely man. So, and yes, Karen might have been jealous of John. She might have been insecure about his connections with everyone else. She might have wanted more time with him and not with everyone else that he was spending time with. I don't know if that goes beyond that. So, did Kerry ever mention what shocked Jen? No, she didn't. Jen mentioned it, that Kerry called Karen a babysitter with benefits or whatever. How did this get through grand jury? Stacy, when I ascertain that point, I'll let you know. But I don't know. I just don't know. DK said, when do you think Lally will be done? I don't know. We've got scientific testimony, has to be phones, which could be at least two or three people. Probably two. Pathologist. I can't imagine they wouldn't have some kind of accident expert. We haven't heard from any of the investigating officers. Somebody swabbed shirts. Somebody collected the victim's belongings from the hospital. There's a lot of technical evidence to go through. Chris said, who told Trooper Proctor about the Aruba fight? If I had to guess, and this is a guess, this is me guessing, it would probably have been John's sister-in-law because Karen called her about it because they were also in Aruba. I think Aruba goes to show that Karen drunk can go from 0 to 100 in a moment. I don't get why Proctor met the Aruba girls. Looking for motive, but not checking the house where the victim was found, which makes it seem like it was not maybe incompetence, right? It's like he was tracking down leads, just not all the leads. How does the fight compare to what we heard and Deputy heard? How does it elevate to suspicion for murder? I don't know if it does elevate to suspicion for murder. I think, if anything, it goes to show that they had fights in their relationship. Okay. MC said Jen should have realized bluntness is a good thing. I don't know if that self-awareness is going to be there. Trophy Wife said had to rewind doing laundry, Roll Tide. Oh, we saw lots of Roll Tide in the chat. Speaking of which, y'all, if you're getting weather today, stay safe. We're starting to get weather here. I know lots of you got weather yesterday. Tanny said, who's to say she didn't have drinks at home waiting for John? No one. Tanny, no one. You're 100% correct. No one. John could have driven from the waterfall back to 34 Fairview. Karen could have gone back to John's house. I'm surprised we haven't seen ring footage of Karen arriving back at John's house at whenever she arrived back there. At some point, we have to see it. Where's the ring footage of her returning back? Is she stumbling when she's getting out of the car? We've seen a lot of footage, but we didn't see the ring footage of Jen, Karen, and Kerry leaving to go look for John, to my memory. Unless it was at the very beginning of the case. But then why not show it to them again? That seems weird. And we haven't seen footage of Karen arriving back to John's place because she slept on the couch there. And we haven't seen it at all. But yes, she could have gone home and had a couple drinks. Though if she was intending to go home that night, would she have? I don't know. G Money. Also what I call my kid. He hates it when I call him that. I love it the most. Said, I don't understand who the cops are covering for. Karen Reed, but the cops colluded with witnesses and the witnesses are against Karen Reed. So confused. The cops are friends with the people at the house where John O'Keefe was found and didn't seem to investigate that much at all. And I don't know if that is the law enforcement organizing things. I don't know if that's law enforcement all just going, we're not looking into this anymore. I don't know. I've got a ton of questions. And I think we're another 4 weeks out. Emily said, question, if she's so jealous of other women, why didn't she fight with him constantly about his close relationships with Laura Sullivan? We don't know if she did or if she didn't. Because John can't tell us. And Karen, I would imagine at this point, will likely not testify. Malleus said, in a trial where it becomes extremely clear the state is extremely unlikely to prevail in its case and it's likely that state employees will become further implicated, do they just have to let it go? I think they're in too deep. I also don't know if the state thinks that their case is as bad as we might think it is at this point. They know what's coming. We don't. But I don't know if my feelings will change between now and when the state rests their case. I am trying to be patient, but I do not like sitting in confusion. I have so many questions. Jess said, just got my Pride tumbler. Yay, thank you. You're welcome. I'm glad you got it. Sean said, that's it. They built her up like she was going to say something big. Sounded like her boyfriend hitting on a woman on vacay and she overreacted. I don't even think he was hitting on her. I just think she either hugged him or he was stumbling drunk and she's like, hey, buddy, you're going back this way. Michelle said she cared more about making Karen sound like a bitch than she did about her beloved godfather's death. No emotion. I didn't read it that way, Michelle, but I imagine you're not the only one who did. Jen said Kerry is a talker, but she seems to be direct. Kerry did seem to be direct. Doesn't mean she doesn't like to have a chat, but she does seem to be direct. I'm happy to report that my dogs won the game. Congratulations, Pinky. Talking about the Bama Georgia game. Sorry for everyone in the chat that is not following the sports ball in the US. That is talking about Georgia beating Alabama. Tracy said, who else thinks that half of the prosecution case is regular stuff, but her name is Karen. So, I mean, a lot of it is just stuff. So the suggested motive is Karen hears the mention of a person John dated 10 years ago, flies into a blind rage and decides to murder him with the car. I don't know, but the Bella's mom of it all in the directions is just, what did you drink? Did you nap after? How long? All of it. Like, how was your pool day? I'll be hydrating in style because my tumbler came today. Isn't it beautiful? For all of you who are getting your tumblers, I'm glad you enjoy them. We're working on some other ones with different styles of tumblers. For all of you that don't like the spiky ones, I like the spiky ones a lot, but we are working on some other ones. So, have we officially named Pickle Pal? Pickle Pal had been named my cousin Dilly so far. But I did see a lot of butt dill suggestions because it became the butt dial trial. I did see some butt dill. Right now it is my cousin Dilly because it just seemed to fit. So it's just. So, let's see. Lally should get second-degree murder for boring us all to death. The jury has got to be also confused. We're confused. They are confused. We may need an olive sticker. I mean, we love the olives. So confused. Maybe she can help the Commonwealth's witnesses with their memory. Oh, the witness who works at a memory facility, right? Lilith. This is something that is not on the close horizon because it takes a bit more, but you should be able to access it if you have a PC, not a PC, a tablet of some kind, but we are working on it, but it's going to take some time to have a web version. It is a whole different thing. This one took quite some time, but the suggestion has been made and you are not the only one. So we have heard you. Brian says, was the table at Aruba a high top or a low top? I'm actually kind of pissed we don't know. At this point, I'm kind of pissed we don't know. Like, don't know. Kind of pissed that we don't know. All right. Stephen said it signals to me that her testimony did more damage to the prosecution and no value to add cross. It might have made them look ruthless to the jury. I agree with you. I think a tough cross on a likable witness is difficult. I also think when a witness is likable and doesn't hurt you, it's okay to just let it go. But it takes a very confident attorney to do that. A lot of attorneys will not just skip across. So I was interested to see it. I know you were interested to see it. And with this, I am, we're done for the day. We've gotten through not all of our questions, but as many as we can. And we are just, I am tired. I'm sure you are tired. We've got quick bits for you tomorrow. I'll put out the podcast tomorrow. If you want to listen to the audio for the tea on the Corey Richards case or on Baldwin, that's out now on audio. What else? Friday, I'm going to have to figure out when I'm starting. So that's a conversation I'm going to need to have with the team because Judge Abby's going to be in town. And I really want to see what is going to happen with Brian Higgins. Don't you? So that's where we're going to resume when we pick up court on Friday. I'll let you know in the app when I'm going live. You'll see it here on YouTube when we set the live stream. But I will see you in the chat tomorrow for the podcast. I'll be in the chat with you. So that'll be lovely. It'll be like kind of a normal Wednesday, but on a Thursday. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Law Nerds, day 16. We out. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a Law Nerd. Wait, this one. I'll see you in court on Friday. You can stay up to date with everything I'm covering and fast notifications on our free iOS and Android app at lawnerdapp.com or search the App Store for Law Nerd. You can also follow me around social media, and don't forget to check out my podcast, The Emily Show, with quick bits dropping every Monday, summarizing everything I do here on the live streams on Tuesday and Thursday for when you just have time for the quick bits. Thanks for being a Law Nerd.